Welcome to a special taping of Getting Ready. And welcome to another very special place.
We welcome you to Getting Ready with Jamie Cart Ministries.
Get ready. Are you ready? Get ready. Are you ready?
Welcome to Getting Ready. Hi, I'm Pastor Jamie. We are standing on some soil that is very important to the United States of America. You can see behind me a building, and it is called the House of Burgess, or it is called the Capitol. This is the building that really just the legislation of the country continued from. I want to read to you something important. In Congress, July 4th, 1776, this can be very familiar, but really hear what happened on this soil about this important decision in the United States of America. The unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America, which was the 13 colonies that we began with, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them, a decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. So many times we forget that there is a root. There is a foundation that happens. And before we got to the Declaration of Independence, there was a beginning to the House of Burgess. The House of Burgess is something we would call today like the House of Representatives that we have in the United States of America. They are leaders that are put in place by the people, and they are supposed to be for the people. And so if you've seen in another broadcast, you saw us taping at Jamestown, Virginia, which is the place where the first settlers came. The first permanent settlers came from England. They were under the jurisdiction and the power of a king. And when they came to this new world, they came here under that jurisdiction and authority by that king to start a new colony, if you will, a new world over here. And they did. And they started and they made it. Some of them survived. And they got through the hard times. And they had such drive and such commitment to what this country could be. So the very first assembly of the House of Burgess didn't happen in this place that's behind me here. It happened at Jamestown. It happened in 1618, and it happened in the church that was built at Jamestown. Within that fort, within those people, that colony of the first permanent settlers, the first legislative decisions that lasted, they met for 6 days, and they got together as a first government, and they made decisions for this country to begin with on. So the first governmental decisions, the first, if you will, company of the government of this country began inside of a church. And so as years pass, not a lot, we come now to where we are at now, to where some of the people through some years, as those people there at Jamestown, of course they multiplied, they started moving out, more people came from England, and they moved to right up the road where we are today in Williamsburg. Williamsburg is literally, and it truly is, the largest in the world's living museum. And it is extraordinary to come here. Pastor Dwayne and I highly recommend that any United States citizen, anyone who loves America, would come here and see what God has done through this country and through the people of this country. So, getting back to the House of Burgess, the House of Burgess at First Assembly was there at Jamestown. They moved on up and they built, and they kept building, and they kept building here in Williamsburg. The House of Burgess that you see behind us right now, this is not the original building, but it is the original foundation. The original building burned down. And so as soon as it burned down, what does the Americans do? They just go ahead and they build again. So they build on top of it, yet they built it exactly like the first one. So what you're looking at right now is the House of Burgess that is in, they use it here at Williamsburg to teach us what it was like, to teach what our founding fathers, where they met. So in other words, your very prominent names of the people that you know of, they all met here at the House of Burgess. This is the foundation. This is the literal soil they walked on. This is the literal place that they would have rode their horses and their carriages to come to the meetings. And it's just wonderful. It's a wonderful place. So when they would join here, they would always pray. They would always ask the Lord for guidance. And when the king found out that they were calling for prayer and fasting, he didn't like it. And he dissolved them. And so what they do? They went right up the road to Richmond, Virginia, where there were only 600 inhabitants at that time. And so that is why the House of Burgess and the people meeting there at the time, when they were still under that thumb, if you will, of King George, they had to go because he didn't want them praying and fasting before they would make governmental decisions. How much more do we need to get back to prayer and fasting before we make national governmental decisions, and putting people in place who will pray and fast and ask Jesus for direction for every decision made for this nation? Praise the Lord, so be it. So when we are looking at the House of Burgess, and when we're just thinking about their positions and the people that were put in place here, one of the things that before we got to the Declaration of Independence is that it was penned right here at the House of Burgess in June of 1776. Just a little bit of time before we got to the Declaration of Independence. It was literally penned here, the beginning parts of the Declaration of Independence. It was literally here on this soil, on that foundation, in the House of Burgess building, where everyone got together, and it was decided and it was voted on whether the 13 states, the 13, they started as colonies, then they started calling themselves the United States. They were calling themselves that at only the number of 13. And they decided right behind me, right there on that holy soil, that they were going to break away from England. They were going to declare their independence, and they were going to call for people to bring and take on their arms, to take on their guns, and to fight for this country. And that happened right over there. And that was the beginning of the freedom of the United States of America from Great Britain. Now do you see how important this soil, this holy ground that we are on is? And you know, when you're really thinking about all the different, if you will, parts of what happened here in America, we have to remember these things. You know, within the Declaration of Independence, it has all of the things that was happening to them. And if I read all of them right now, you would really hear some similarities that's going on in our country again. I want to read this second part, if I can, as Dwayne gets a good picture of the House of Burgess. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator, which is God, with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government. That whenever any form of government, now really hear this, people of God, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive, when any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish and to institute new government. This is in the Declaration. Laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness and prudence, and indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transcendent causes. That mankind are none disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable, then the right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train, this is so powerful, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. Such has been the patient sufferance of these colonies. And so all of these things that was discussed, that was pinned down in the Declaration of Independence, was already decided upon, was already discussed, was already went over and over and over and over and over in the House of Burgess until that final vote on that final night when it happened here at this building, and that set a course for our nation for freedom. And these men, when they made the decision to vote on that, and they all signed that first resolution here in the House of Burgess, they understood, along when they signed the Declaration of Independence, they understood that everything in their lives was going to be hanging in the balance. And they also knew that war was before them, because the war didn't happen before the Declaration. It was they made a Declaration of Independence, and then the war took place. You know, sometimes when we are speaking life and we're speaking the word and we're working on our faith projects and things are happening in our lives, you know, we have an enemy. And that enemy does not want us to speak life. He doesn't want us to speak the word, because he knows that the power of life and death is in our tongues, and that whatever we say, we shall have. And so when that united voice came through those men, it was war in the spirit and in the natural. I want to talk to you about a word that's in the Bible, and it's called flint. Flint is Strong's number 2496, and it means cha-melish. It means hard, hardness, firmness, construct. It's a very hard rock or stone, and it gets harder through time and through pressure. What is flint? It also has a Strong's number of 6862 of Tazar, and it means a narrow, it means tight, it means an adversary, it means affliction and anguish, close, distress, and it means an enemy and a foe. Flint is a symbol of when the enemy comes against you. And yes, it can be hard. So on one side, the enemy is the symbol of the flint, and he's bringing the affliction, or he's bringing the distress. He's the enemy, he's the foe coming at you. But on the other side of flint, what it does is that whomever that pressure comes toward, that person gets very strong. That person gets very resolved. That person gets very firm on what they believe. So flint's not a bad thing. Flint's a good thing. And that's one of the things that happen with everyone that we have learned about here as we've been going back to the roots, the foundations of our country here in Williamsburg. And that is that we found that the men and women of that time, the men and women of Jamestown, the men and women of this time of the Revolutionary War, they set their faces like flint for this country and for the generations to follow. We are standing on their shoulders, on their foundations. We are here because of what they decided in that building behind us, because of what they did at Jamestown and made it through and survived. We're here because of their flint, of their firmness, from their resolve. They resolved that America was worth it all, and therefore they gave it all. Now, I want to talk to you about someone else who is the greatest example of someone who else. They set their face like flint. In Isaiah 50, verses 6 and 7, it says, I offered my back to those who beat me, and my cheeks to those who pulled out my beard. I did not hide my face from mockery and spitting. This is Jesus. I offered my back to those who beat me, and my cheeks to those who pulled out my beard. Jesus, when it got hard, when the flint, the foe, the enemy, the devil, was coming at him, he didn't hide his face. No, and he didn't run. He offered his back. He offered his cheeks for them to pull out his beard. He did not run. He ran too. He did not hide. He stood. And he allowed himself to be offered. It said, I did not hide my face from mockery and spitting. He let the words from the enemy come at him. He let the people spit on him. And the people of the Revolutionary War here, the people of Jamestown, they faced such trials, terrible trials, terrible things said about them, done to them. Great betrayals happened through all these times, yet they had set their face like flint, and it did not matter what came at them. America was worth it. It goes on to say in Isaiah 50, verses 6 and 7, because the sovereign Lord helps me, I will not be disgraced. Therefore, I have set my face like a stone, determined to do his will. And I know that I will not be put to shame. And it says in the Amplified translation of verse 7, for the Lord God helps me, therefore I have not been ashamed or humiliated. Therefore I have made my face like flint, and I know that I will not be put to shame. Why are we talking about this? Because our Jesus, our King, the King to whom we serve, he set his face like flint when things were hard, when he was forming, if you will, a new man. Ephesians 2 says that it was a new man that he was establishing. Jew and Gentile coming together, one new man. Us being grafted into Israel. He was forming a new domain of people. And these people at Jamestown, the people of the Revolutionary War, they were forming a new nation, a new idea, a new way, all based on the Word of God. Jesus Christ was a great forerunner, the forerunner for us in forming this nation. But it took something on his part, and that was making a determination to set his face like stone, his face like flint. We see again in Luke 9:51 about Jesus, and he says here, now when the time was almost come for Jesus to be received up to heaven, he steadfastly and determinedly set his face to go to Jerusalem. He had had his face set to go to Jerusalem. What was going to happen in Jerusalem? He was going to be mocked. He was going to have trials that were illegal. He was going to be falsely accused. He was going to be whipped. He was going to have his beard pulled out. He was going to be spit upon. He was going to be crucified. And he would die. And he set his face like flint to go and do that. He did not turn away from it. He kept going. And he kept going. And he kept going. You know, the Lord told me when I was waking up on the 24th of June, and this was in 2020, and he woke me up and he said these words to me, change is coming. Change is here. And when he said that to me, I didn't exactly know what he was saying in 2020. But now I see very clearly there's a big change that's happened in our country. And it's not been for the good. There's been much deception from the government that's in there now, and many lies, many trickery things are happening. You know, change means to become different, the act or instance of becoming different. You can hear the bell at the Hall of Burgess now behind me, and I believe that's very prophetic happening right now, that there is a bell that's being ringing in this country. You know, we have the Liberty Bell that was rung at the Hall of Independence once the Declaration of Independence was read, and they rang the Liberty Bell. There's another justice that needs to take place in our country. There is another form, if you will, wave of liberty that must take place in our country again. When our nation, that all that has been done, all the foundation that has been laid, all the sacrifice, all the blood that has been shed to make this country, and it is the greatest country that has ever been known to mankind. It is time now in our generation to stand, to do the right things, to stand for God and to stand for this country, and to not be deceived by what is being told. Deception harming the children, deception in the schools, deception in the colleges, deception in the medical care, deception all over this world. The trafficking, the open borders that has happened, allowing people to come in and then they just disappear. Where are they taking them? What are they using them for? There is such evil going on in this world. Have eyes to see and ears to hear, church. Do not be asleep at this time. Wake up and understand that the bell is ringing. It is time to gather again. It is time for the patriots to gather again. It is time for the Declaration of Independence again, and that we stand on the Constitution and the Bill of Rights that have been given to us, so greatly given to us. It is our time to do so again. On July the 11th, 2022, the Lord spoke these words to me, and He said, the silence is over. The silence is over. There's been a time when the church has been very silent. The church allowed prayer to leave school. The church allowed the Ten Commandments to be taken off the walls of our government buildings and off of the institutions and off of our school walls. This is our country. This is the country that chose the Lord and built upon the Lord. This is the country that Reverend Hunt and all of the people with him came with him and decreed and declared that this country would have the gospel spread all over it, and then it would spread all over the world. This country chose Jesus. This country is a free country, a country for justice for all. As I read from the Declaration, and it says here, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. You hear all of these deceptions and lies, that our founding fathers had slaves, and some of them did. They did. Yet, this what they wrote, and this what they fought for, and this what they spoke, is what their dream was. They were fighting up against a system, and it took time for that system to be broke down, all the way when we get to President Abraham Lincoln and General Grant. It took time for all of these things to happen, to abolish slavery, to make what was wrong right. Yet the foundation of their intentions, their heart, they laid down their life and put it down on paper and declared it. This was their heart, and this was what they were going to fight for. And it says again, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Not any different colors. All men are created equal. That they are endowed by their Creator God with certain and inalienable rights. That among them, all men are to have life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. These grounds that we're on, this is a gift to us to look back and to understand how important it is that liberty and freedom is saved in this country. And I say saved because it's very close to being lost. This is how the Declaration ends. And it says, we therefore, the representatives of the United States of America in General Congress assembled, appealing to the Supreme Judge of the world for the rectitude of our intentions, do, in the name and by authority of the good people of these colonies, solemnly publish, so we write it and declare it, that these united colonies are, and of the right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved, and that as free and independent states, they have full power to levy war, conclude peace, contract alliances, establish commerce, and to do all other acts and things which independent states may of right to do. And so for the support of this declaration, with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence from God, we mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor.